this is something that has kind of annoyed me. I partly catch myself on this, but it's something that I see a lot with theists. A lot of things that just keep happening, which is this idea, especially with theists, where they accept science when it fits their preconceived ideas, but for any other time, it's wrong. It's corrupt. It lies. It deceives, and all these sorts of things. Like creationists do it all the time. They'll sit there and reject anything about evolution, except for something in science that they can twist, or one little side person that agrees with them. They'll point to a couple of scientists that actually reject evolution, ignoring the majority that accept. You know, you see a lot of archaeology. They'll ignore people like Israel Finkelstein and other archaeologists that seem to be saying that a lot of the stuff in the Bible isn't true, yet they'll hang on tightly to some of the crackpots that say they found the Ark, or that they found, the site for Sodom and Gomorrah, even though there's multiple sites, and so on. They'll ignore the fact that, archaeology shows that Joshua's conquering happened over 700 years, the different cities, or the fact that Judea wasn't very big at the time of King David, and all these kind of things. Yet they'll point to one little thing that mentions House of David. They'll ignore the fact that, there's no evidence of, Jews ever being in in Egypt, and yet they'll sit there and latch on to a single chariot wheel found in the middle of the Dead Sea or whatever, and all these kind of things, where just little bits of evidence that sort of fits or possibly fits them to latch onto, yet they'll ignore the majority of the evidence that points against it. You see it also with, origins, when the majority of scientists and physicists seem to say that, there is no need for God. They'll latch on to one or two signs to say, well, yes, God is needed, or to little bits of stuff that they barely understand in science, like infinite regress and stuff like that. You also see it a lot with conspiracy theorists. They'll latch on to the slightest bit of data that seems to point towards them, ignoring the majority of data that shows is against it. It seems extremely hypocritical to me to accept science when it fits your idea, even though, especially in a lot of cases, it's a very small, minor offset, like a couple of fringe people that have fringe ideas. They'll latch onto them and ignore the majority of scientists and the majority of science and what it actually says. A lot of these people that they're latching on to have been discredited, or they don't have any peer review, or none of their data has actually been verified. Yet they still latch on to it. You can't accept parts of little bits of science that fit your preconceived ideas and then ignore the majority of what scientists and science says. Science is based on evidence, repeatability, and so on. What you use to get to your conclusions, I should be able to use to get to a similar conclusion. Otherwise, there's something wrong here. And yet this part is ignored by a lot of theists. They'll latch on to, like I said, the fringe things that certain scientists happen to believe, yet majority ignore. And yes, it's possible that the fringe have something that's true. And if it's true, it'll start to grow in acceptance and whatnot. But the time to believe it is when it's grown in acceptance. not latching onto it because it seems like one scientist over here seems to have an idea that fits yours. You know, that's not science. That's not learning. You're not learning by just accepting any little idea that fits, because then you don't drop it or you don't ignore it when it's proven false. You latch on to what you want rather than what's true. You know, it doesn't matter if it's creationism, quantum physics, astrophysics, archaeology, whatever. Go where the evidence leads, not where your heart leads and wants you to believe. You know, comment below if you agree or disagree, or if you have any other examples of things like this. Let me know what you think.